What if I told you that there is a face, a real, living human face, that neuroscientists, plastic surgeons, and psychologists have genuinely struggled to categorize? Not because it's imperfect, but because it's something so rare, so unusual, that the very tools science uses to measure beauty seem to fall short when applied to it. Today, we're going to talk about that face. We're going to talk about the science of attraction, the psychology of why certain faces hold your gaze longer than others, and why one particular artist from South Korea has become the most unexpected subject of this conversation. His name is Jimin. He is a member of BTS. And whether you have ever heard a single one of his songs or not, the science behind his face is genuinely fascinating, and it tells us something profound about the way human brains perceive beauty. Before we dive in, I want to be clear about something. This video is not about fandom. It is not about rankings or opinions, or who is the most attractive person alive. It is about a scientific phenomenon, a real, documented, measurable phenomenon, that this particular face happens to illustrate better than almost any other example in recent cultural history. That is why we are here. Now let's get into it. Let's start with a basic question. Why do we find certain faces more attractive than others? This isn't just a philosophical question. It's one that scientists have been trying to answer for decades, and the answers they've found are far more fascinating than most people realize. At its core, the human brain is a pattern recognition machine. From the moment you are born, your visual cortex is processing shapes, proportions, and symmetry at extraordinary speed. Research published in the journal Psychological Science confirms that infants as young as a few months old already show a measurable preference for faces that adults would describe as attractive. Think about that for a moment. Before a baby has been exposed to fashion magazines, social media, or cultural beauty standards, the brain already has a built-in preference. This suggests that certain aspects of attractiveness are not learned. They are hardwired. One of the most discussed theories in the science of beauty is the golden ratio, a mathematical proportion of approximately 1.618 to 1, historically referred to as phi. For centuries, philosophers, artists, and architects believed that proportions aligning with this ratio represented a kind of universal aesthetic harmony. You find it in the spirals of a nautilus shell, in the patterns of sunflower seeds, and in the architecture of the Parthenon. The theory applied to human faces suggests that a face whose features align closely with this ratio, the distance between the eyes, the width of the nose, the proportion of the forehead to the chin, tends to be perceived as more attractive by observers across different cultures. Research from the University of California, San Diego, found that facial attractiveness reaches an optimal point when the vertical distance between the eyes and mouth is approximately 36% of the face's total length, and the horizontal distance between the eyes is approximately 46% of the face's width. These proportions, interestingly, are very close to what appears in faces that observers across multiple countries consistently rate as the most beautiful. But here is where the science gets complicated, and where Jimin's face becomes genuinely interesting. Modern researchers have increasingly acknowledged that the golden ratio, while a useful starting point, cannot fully explain why some faces captivate us while others, equally symmetrical and proportionate, do not. A study published in a medical journal and reviewed by PMC, the National Institutes of Health's digital archive, concluded that there is currently no single mathematical formula that can universally define facial beauty. The relationship between proportions and attractiveness is real, but it is far more nuanced than a single ratio can capture. What the research increasingly points to is something scientists call processing fluency. The theory is straightforward. The human brain responds positively to things it can process efficiently. Faces that are balanced, harmonious, and proportionate require less cognitive effort to interpret. And when the brain processes something easily, it generates a mild but real neurological reward response. Areas of the brain associated with pleasure and reward, the same areas activated by music, food, and social connection, show increased activity when viewing faces that the brain finds easy to process. But here is the fascinating twist. Processing fluency alone does not explain why we keep looking. It explains why we find something pleasant. It does not explain why we find it captivating. And there is a difference. Pleasant is easy to look away from. Captivating is not. What creates genuine captivation, according to researchers in visual psychology, is a combination of familiarity and novelty at the same time. When a face is slightly unusual, When it deviates just enough from what you expect to create a kind of cognitive tension, the brain enters a state of heightened engagement. It keeps looking because it is trying to resolve something it cannot quite categorize. Scientists sometimes describe this as the uncanny valley effect in reverse. Instead of being repelled by something almost but not quite human, the brain is drawn towards something that is deeply human but also somehow beyond its existing templates. Think of it this way. Your brain has spent your entire life building a mental library of faces, thousands of them, each filed under a category. Young, old, masculine, feminine, familiar, foreign. When a face arrives that does not fit cleanly into any of those existing files, the brain does not close the book. It opens it wider. It allocates more attention. It keeps returning, keeps searching for the file it never quite finds. That sustained attention is what we experience as captivation. And it is, from a neurological standpoint, a completely involuntary response. This, according to beauty experts and psychologists who have commented on Jimin's appearance, is precisely what makes his face so difficult to stop looking at. In February 2026, Yeleli Thailand published a report featuring commentary from Dr. Anthony Yoon, an American board-certified plastic surgeon with over 5 million followers across social media platforms. Dr. Yoon was discussing natural-looking celebrities, people whose faces appear so refined and harmonious that observers often assume they have had cosmetic procedures, when in fact their appearance is the result of natural genetics. Jimin was among those he cited specifically. According to the report, Dr. Yoon described Jimin's face as having what he called an amazingly balanced and harmonious ratio. He pointed specifically to the slender facial contour, the skin's healthy complexion, and what he described as soft but unique and attractive lines around the eyes and lips. His conclusion was that Jimin represents a rare example of natural beauty, a face that achieves the kind of visual harmony that many people associate with surgical enhancement through genetics alone. The media coverage following this went further. Star News Korea, citing the same observations, reported that Jimin tries various hairstyles, is not bound by traditional beauty frames, and has what they described as both genderless sensuality and masculine and boyish qualities simultaneously. This combination, they argued, is what positions him as an idol who has influenced modern beauty trends, not through a standardized artificial appearance, but through what they call a natural maze that no one can imitate. This language, a natural maze, is actually quite precise from a psychological standpoint. A maze is something that draws you in and keeps you engaged precisely because it resists easy resolution. A face that carries multiple, seemingly contradictory qualities at the same time creates that same effect in the viewer's brain. It is both familiar and foreign, both soft and defined, both masculine and delicate. The brain, confronted with this paradox, does not look away. It keeps engaging, keeps processing, keeps trying to arrive at a stable interpretation that never quite arrives. What makes this especially remarkable is that Jimin has never publicly framed himself in these terms. He has not constructed a persona around being uncategorizable or challenging beauty norms. The science simply emerged from observations made by experts, watching how the world responded to his presence. That organic quality, the fact that it happened without being engineered, may itself be part of the phenomenon. At its core, the human brain is a pattern recognition machine. From the moment you are born, your visual cortex is processing shapes, proportions, and symmetry at extraordinary speed. Research published in the journal Psychological Science confirms that infants as young as a few months old already show a measurable preference for faces that adults would describe as attractive. Think about that for a moment. Before a baby has been exposed to fashion magazines, social media, or cultural beauty standards, the brain already has a built-in preference. This suggests that certain aspects of attractiveness are not learned. They are hardwired. One of the most discussed theories in the science of beauty is the golden ratio, a mathematical proportion of approximately 1.618 to 1, historically referred to as phi. For centuries, philosophers, artists, and architects believed that proportions aligning with this ratio represented a kind of universal aesthetic harmony. You find it in the spirals of a nautilus shell, in the patterns of sunflower seeds, and in the architecture of the Parthenon. The theory applied to human faces suggests that a face whose features align closely with this ratio, the distance between the eyes, the width of the nose, the proportion of the forehead to the chin, tends to be perceived as more attractive by observers across different cultures. Research from the University of California, San Diego found that facial attractiveness reaches an optimal point when the vertical distance between the eyes and mouth is approximately 36% of the face's total length, and the horizontal distance between the eyes is approximately 46% of the face's width. These proportions, interestingly, are very close to what appears in faces that observers across multiple countries consistently rate as the most beautiful. But here is where the science gets complicated, and where Jimin's face becomes genuinely interesting. Modern researchers have increasingly acknowledged that the golden ratio, while a useful starting point, cannot fully explain why some faces captivate us while others, equally symmetrical and proportionate, do not. A study published in a medical journal and reviewed by PMC, the National Institutes of Health's digital archive, concluded that there is currently no single mathematical formula that can universally define facial beauty. The relationship between proportions and attractiveness is real, but it is far more nuanced than a single ratio can capture. What the research increasingly points to is something scientists call processing fluency. The theory is straightforward. The human brain responds positively to things it can process efficiently. Faces that are balanced, harmonious, and proportionate require less cognitive effort to interpret. And when the brain processes something easily, it generates a mild but real neurological reward response. Areas of the brain associated with pleasure and reward, the same areas activated by music, food, and social connection, show increased activity when viewing faces that the brain finds easy to process. But here is the fascinating twist. Processing fluency alone does not explain why we keep looking. It explains why we find something pleasant. It does not explain why we find it captivating. And there is a difference. Pleasant is easy to look away from. Captivating is not. What creates genuine captivation, according to researchers in visual psychology, is a combination of familiarity and novelty at the same time. When a face is slightly unusual, when it deviates just enough from what you expect to create a kind of cognitive tension, the brain enters a state of heightened engagement. It keeps looking because it is trying to resolve something it cannot quite categorize. Scientists sometimes describe this as the uncanny valley effect in reverse. Instead of being repelled by something almost but not quite human, the brain is drawn towards something that is deeply human but also somehow beyond its existing templates. Think of it this way. Your brain has spent your entire life building a mental library of faces, thousands of them, each filed under a category. Young, old, masculine, feminine, familiar, foreign. When a face arrives that does not fit cleanly into any of those existing files, the brain does not close the book. It opens it wider. It allocates more attention. It keeps returning, keeps searching for the file it never quite finds. That sustained attention is what we experience as captivation. And it is, from a neurological standpoint, a completely involuntary response. This, according to beauty experts and psychologists who have commented on Jimin's appearance, is precisely what makes his face so difficult to stop looking at. In February 2026, Yaleli, Thailand, published a report featuring commentary from Dr. Anthony Yoon, an American board-certified plastic surgeon with over 5 million followers across social media platforms. Dr. Yoon was discussing natural-looking celebrities, people whose faces appear so refined and harmonious that observers often assume they have had cosmetic procedures, when in fact their appearance is the result of natural genetics. Jimin was among those he cited specifically. According to the report, Dr. Yoon described Jimin's face as having what he called an amazingly balanced and harmonious ratio. He pointed specifically to the slender facial contour, the skin's healthy complexion, and what he described as soft but unique and attractive lines around the eyes and lips. His conclusion was that Jimin represents a rare example of natural beauty, a face that achieves the kind of visual harmony that many people associate with surgical enhancement through genetics alone. The media coverage following this went further. Star News Korea, citing the same observations, reported that Jimin tries various hairstyles, is not bound by traditional beauty frames, and has what they described as both genderless sensuality and masculine and boyish qualities simultaneously. This combination, they argued, is what positions him as an idol who has influenced modern beauty trends, not through a standardized artificial appearance, but through what they call the natural maze that no one can imitate. This language, a natural maze, is actually quite precise from a psychological standpoint. A maze is something that draws you in and keeps you engaged precisely because it resists easy resolution. A face that carries multiple, seemingly contradictory qualities at the same time creates that same effect in the viewer's brain. It is both familiar and foreign, both soft and defined, both masculine and delicate. The brain, confronted with this paradox, does not look away. It keeps engaging, keeps processing, keeps trying to arrive at a stable interpretation that never quite arrives. What makes this especially remarkable is that Jimin has never publicly framed himself in these terms. He has not constructed a persona around being uncategorizable or challenging beauty norms. The science simply emerged from observations made by experts watching how the world responded to his presence. That organic quality, the fact that it happened without being engineered, may itself be part of the phenomenon. To understand why this matters beyond one person's face, we need to talk about a broader shift in how scientists and cultural researchers understand beauty itself. For most of recorded human history, beauty standards operated on a binary. Masculine features were defined one way, feminine features were defined another, and the most culturally valued faces tended to sit clearly within one category or the other. But research over the past 2 decades has increasingly challenged this model. A study published in the journal Nature in 1998 found that perceptions of facial attractiveness are influenced by what researchers called sexual dimorphism, the degree to which a face displays gender-specific features. Interestingly, the research found that the most universally attractive faces were not necessarily those with the most pronounced gender-specific features. Instead, they were often faces that combined elements of both in proportions that the brain found harmonious and balanced. This finding aligns with a broader cultural shift that researchers in fashion and social psychology have documented over the past decade. The concept of genderless or gender-fluid beauty has moved from the margins of fashion to its center. And Jimin, whether by deliberate choice or natural inclination, appears to embody this shift more completely than almost any other public figure. He was included in the Business of Fashion's annual BOF yearbook in the category labeled Model and Muse, a designation that recognized him not just as someone who wears clothes well, but as someone who inspires creative work in others. Fashion photographers, designers, and visual artists have repeatedly cited his presence as uniquely inspiring, precisely because his face does not fit neatly into existing categories. It creates space for something new. From a neuroscience perspective, this is significant. When the brain encounters a face that challenges existing categories, it engages more deeply than it does with a face that confirms them. Confirmation is comfortable but forgettable. Challenge is uncomfortable but memorable. And Jimin's face, in this sense, is extraordinarily memorable. So what does all of this actually mean? Not just for one K-pop artist, but for our understanding of beauty itself. The science of facial attractiveness has gone through several major revisions over the past century. It began with the fairly simple idea that symmetry equals beauty, which gave way to more nuanced models involving proportionality, averageness, and the golden ratio. Those models in turn gave way to the current understanding, which acknowledges that the most captivating faces are rarely the most mathematically perfect ones. They are the ones that carry within them a kind of productive tension, a balance of qualities that the brain finds simultaneously easy and difficult to process. Facial symmetry signals genetic health. Clear skin signals vitality. Proportionate features signal developmental stability. But the quality that turns a pleasant face into a captivating one, the quality that makes you keep looking even when you have already processed all the information, is something subtler and more subjective. It is the quality of being genuinely difficult to categorize, of occupying a space that your brain has no existing file for. Jimin's face, according to the experts and researchers who have commented on it, occupies that space. It is the space between categories, between expectations, between the familiar and the foreign. And the brain, confronted with that space, does what it always does when it encounters something it cannot immediately resolve. It keeps looking. It keeps trying. It keeps returning. There is something worth sitting with in that observation. In a world that has spent centuries defining beauty as adherence to a set of fixed standards, a particular ratio, a particular configuration of features, a particular expression of gender, the most compelling face of the moment is compelling precisely because it refuses those standards. Not out of defiance, but simply because it is what it is. And perhaps that is the most important scientific insight of all. The faces that hold our attention longest are not the ones that best match our expectations. They are the ones that quietly, persistently, refuse to be fully resolved. They are the ones that give our endlessly pattern-seeking brain something genuinely worth returning to. The science of beauty has always been, at its heart, the science of attention. What draws the eye? What holds it? What brings it back? And while we have built extraordinarily sophisticated tools to measure symmetry and proportion and ratio, the thing that most reliably holds human attention turns out to be something those tools struggle to quantify. It is authenticity. It is the sense that a face is expressing something genuine, not performing beauty, not conforming to a template, but simply existing in its own particular way, and in doing so, creating a space that the viewer's brain finds genuinely worth exploring. Whether you are a longtime fan of BTS, or you had never heard of Jimin before watching this video, the science we've discussed today applies to every face you find yourself returning to. There is always a reason your brain keeps looking. And most of the time, that reason is far more interesting than simple symmetry. So the next time you find yourself unable to look away from a face, whether it's on screen, on a billboard, or across a room, pay attention to that feeling. Your brain is telling you something. It found something it cannot quite file away. And in that small, involuntary moment of sustained attention, there is the entire science of what it means to be beautiful. If you found this video interesting, consider sharing it with someone who loves both science and art, because this is a topic that lives at the intersection of both. Thank you for watching.